In my free time, to make a little extra cash, I babysit for a lot of families that have young children, and I also serve at the Harris Creek Nursery. And something I've noticed is that children are becoming increasingly dependent on screens, on tablets, phones, whatever that might look like. So I'm going to tell you why children need controlled screen time. For 3 different reasons that we're going to talk about today are obesity, behavioral problems, and impaired cognitive function. So in a study done by the United States, but it also had different study sites in Australia, Brazil, Finland, Colombia, China, it was all over the world. It studied children that were between ages 9 and 18, their total sedentary time, which means that they sat still and did not move around, and their screen time and how those two correlated. So between the characteristics of sex, age, and parental education, they found that 8.6 hours of the day children are spent sitting. And 54.2% of children failed to meet their screen time guidelines, which was under 5 hours a day. So that is absolutely insane. Children go to school for 8 hours a day and they spend so much of it sitting, watching a screen, watching a teacher write on a screen and all of those things, and other people are teaching them. In 9 to 12 sites, girls engage in significantly higher sedentary time than boys. They spend a lot more time lounging around and being girls, but boys had higher BMI rates, and they linked this to having a TV or computer in the bedroom. A little bit of mess up there. Behavioral issues. So children who are in excessive and constant viewers of any kind of television or screen are linked to having impaired psychosocial skills. So think about how popular TV shows and popular movies and ads that you see on TV shows are increasingly violent. Studies show that early and persistent exposure to violent content raises the chance of engaging in antisocial behavior. And they also did a study where between 9 and 18-year-old boys had an MRI scan, and the part of the brain that lights up when you have a substance dependence also lit up whenever they were playing video games. So between ages 6 months and 18 months of age, if you had increased TV exposure, they said that they had emotional reactivity issues with aggression and externalizing their behaviors. So this suggests that different types of screen activities may have a difference in distinct genders, but both of them have emotional development issues. So gaming is on a higher level in boys than girls, and so they had a little bit of a higher issue with emotional understanding than girls did, but it was prevalent in both. And then lastly, they had impaired cognitive functions. So language development is something that we get very early in age. They even tell you to start reading books to your child in utero so that they can have brain function. And so between child and caregivers, there was a demonstrated negative effect of screen use and multimedia tasking and academic functions for children that spent more time on screens than they did reading, which makes sense. In my elementary school during October is Literacy Awareness Month, and we had like a competition to see who could read the most. And I don't even feel like that stuff happens anymore. So the Quebec longitudinal study of child development cohort found that there was a 7% unit decrease in participation in the classroom and a 6% unit decrease in math proficiency in the 4th grade. 4th grade, you're about 12, 10? And all of these had a 1 hour increase in TV exposure every day over a period of time. So another study conducted in the United States found a significant link between higher levels of medium multitasking and how they had lower scores on standardized testing in math proficiency and English proficiency. So lastly, there was another study, I've done a lot of research on this, that students who had a co-view time with a parent, and then they had different sections of groups, so it was like less than 1 hour a day, 2 to 3 hours a day, 3 to 4 hours a day. They took different studies from the groups and asked also if their parents viewed with them, and those who had the most had poorer vocabulary acquisition and expressive lexical issues, which means that they could not even function correct words at correct settings at correct times. They had poor vocabulary and they were not performing as well. So how do we fix this? Why is this a problem? Well, obviously, behavioral issues, obesity, and lexical impairment is all a problem in the youth of America. But the way that we can stop this is keeping phones, TVs, and tablets out of bedrooms. Children are getting not rewarded with 1 hour, but it's just known that, oh, at night I play video games with my friends. Mindless eating is a problem. I don't know if you agree with that. It says so locked in right now. I am locked in. Thank you, Shelby. Mindless eating is addictive. It's a problem. So you need to monitor what your children are watching and if you don't sit down in front of a screen to eat your dinner. So it's more of a reward, if that makes sense. Viewing and subscribing what your children are watching is very important because people are teaching your children wild things and then you're like, what is this fad? What are you talking about? And it turns out to be highly inappropriate for their age group. Eliminate background TV, view with a purpose, make it a family time situation. We're gonna watch one show at this time. Like I said, it's a reward. It's not something that's part of your nighttime routine, it's a reward. Record programs so you can watch them later and fast forward through inappropriate parts, shows or ads. Sometimes things are not suitable for the age group, it says. Have you ever watched a movie and been like, this was rated PG-13? That happens quite frequently these days. And then lastly, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that media use for children younger than 2 is 0. Younger than 2 years old children do not need to have the screen turned on at all for instant gratification. It needs to be that they need to be okay with being upset for a little bit and be able to express their emotions. Older than 2 years old, it's recommended for no more than 1 to 2 hours a day. Let your kids play outside. They need to ride bikes and play with chalk and have imagination and not be constantly entertained by a screen. It's hurting their brains and it's hurting their futures.